Hey gang, thanks for joining us for another edition of Chicken Skin Moments with Pastor Dain, where I get to turn you on to cool stuff that I found in the Bible. And today I want to talk about idols, but I want to begin with this concept. Have you ever heard anybody say, well, Christianity's so narrow-minded, as if it were some knock on Christianity, like, you're so narrow-minded. But have you ever thought about it logically? Think about this. Imagine if you were God, or a God, right? You're God. And you create this universe, and at the center point of this universe, you create this little planet, and you create these little creatures, men and women, who you love deeply and want to engage in a relationship with them. Would you not want to go to them and say, hey, it's me, God. I'm the one who made you. And if they were off chasing other things and little pieces of rock and stone and metal and wood, would you not be saying, hey, that's not me. It's me, God. I'm over here. To me, that makes really logical sense, that if there is a God, he would say just that, I am the God. Well, interestingly enough, that is what the Old Testament talks about all the time on the subject of idols. Now, I want you to go after you watch this video and read Isaiah chapter 44 and 45. It's actually almost kind of comical, but let me just summarize. In chapter 44 of Isaiah, God's like, why do you have these guys? They're metal workers. They make stuff with metal. There's woodworkers. They make stuff with wood. There's stone workers who make stuff with stone. And then they create this thing. In fact, there's one interesting thing. He says they take a block of wood, and with part of that block of wood, they make a fire to bake bread on. And then the other block, they carve it into an idol, and then they bow down and serve and worship this thing that was made by man. Why would you do that? He says, these blocks of wood and this stone and this metal, he says, they don't see you, they don't hear you, they don't speak to you, they have no power to help you, and even if they did, they don't love you. Now, what's interesting about that is what God says about himself all through Scripture, and specifically just in what we call the very names of God. He says this, like with Hagar, I am the God who sees you. I'm El Shammah. I'm the God who speaks to you. I'm the God who has power to help you. Wait, he says, I see you, I hear you, I speak to you. I'm the God that created everything, which gives me the power to help you. And of course, most of all, he says, I love you. Why then would you mess with these objects made of wood and stone and metal? Now, the classic application, by the way, of idols in our life. If you read the Daily Bread version, we as believers should get rid of idols in our life. So for example, for me, you might say, well, surfing was an idol in my life. An idol being anything that gets between me and God, and therefore I shouldn't make surfing be an idol of my life. I should worship God and then, surf in my spare time. But I want to submit to you today that it's actually much more insidious than just having things in our life that maybe get between us and God. Because do you realize we live in a world that worships this idea of what they call relative truth. You ever heard anybody say, hey man, I'm just living out my own truth? Did you ever think about the reality of that statement? That is basically a term that means I create my own God. It's just like going back to the Old Testament, only we've changed the language a little bit. It's what I call going to the Burger King of God. Burger King of God means you can have God your way. So you go into Burger King and you're like, yes, I'd like to order the God of spiritual blessings. In fact, the God of material blessings as well. I'll have an extra layer of grace and forgiveness, but hold the accountability, hold the whole be obedient to, hold the whole I take my orders from that God because I'm going to kind of do whatever I want to do. That's the Burger King of God. Now, by the way, I'm not making this up. I had a friend send me an email one time telling me, hey, Dain, it's interesting that you call yourself a Christian now. He goes, I've kind of taken a little bit from the teachings of Buddha, a little bit from the teachings of Hindu, a little bit from the Bible, and then some common sense. And that's where I've developed my theology on. And I wrote him back saying, well, congratulations. You've created your own God. Now, that's interesting because at the end of Isaiah chapter 44, God says exactly the opposite. He says, I made you. And did you ever think that's really the difference between an idol and our God in heaven. There's the gods that we create ourselves, how we'd like to be. And then there's God who says, I am God, and I am who I am, and I will always be who I will always be, and I created you. Now, do you understand why this is such good news? Because how much power do we have to help ourselves? Well, a little bit. We've got some brain power and maybe some influence with people. But think about the God in heaven whom we serve, who says, do you understand I created everything and I control everything? And I made you, and I have the power to help you, and I love you. This is a God I want to get behind. No wonder one of my favorite things he says about idols in the Old Testament says this. He says, they created for themselves worthless idols, and they themselves became worthless. When you bow down and serve and be obedient to something that's created by man, it has no power to help you, doesn't see you, doesn't hear you, can't speak to you, yeah, and doesn't love you. Forget that. Serve the living God who says, I am alive and I created all life. And then what he says in response, he will give us what Jesus said this. I have come that you might have life and life abundant. Why mess with idols when you serve the living God? Hey gang, thanks for watching. Make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, tell your friends, write your congressman, whatever you got to do. But thanks for watching the video. You're going to want to check out this next video as well. And other than that, we'll see you next time. God bless.